Here we have yet another y equals mx plus b equation. That I hope is obvious. That's something we need to be able to recognize instantly. It doesn't tell us that it's a line, but you should recognize, as soon as possible when we have something that kind of looks like one. Basically, you're going to have an x with no exponent. So y equals mx plus b. In this case, the y is represented as f of t, and then the 14t plus 9 matches up very nicely with y equals mx plus b. So the reason this is important is, and the reason lines are so important on the SAT is when they come up in stories, certain things tend to happen again and again and again. So we need to be very comfortable with the language around lines, even when we are not explicitly told that we have a line. So in this case, what do they want? Well, they're just saying to interpret the 9, right? So if we were thinking about this just in terms of like, okay, it's a y equals mx plus b line, we should know that the 9 is the y-intercept. But when we have a story, the y-intercept isn't just going to be called the y-intercept, because in real life, we don't use that term. That is a very specific to math class kind of term. But we do use the concept of a y-intercept, because think what happens. That is where x is equal to 0, right? That's a starting point, because x is almost always the variable that we're kind of like measuring. And so when we have x being 0, that is like what we're starting with. That is our starting value. So that is the better thing to memorize, is that a y-intercept is going to sound a lot like like they're going to use language that makes it sound like a starting point, an initial value, something like that. Sometimes it's like a fee. If it's a story like that involves money, it'll be like a fee that you have to pay no matter what. So all of those are good ideas to hold in your mind, because this is basically what the question is asking. So let's take a look. What sounds like a starting point? A, Tavon will keep the vine plant for 9 months. Well, that sounds like an ending point, right? Like he's going to end after 9 months. So no, not right. In fact, that doesn't appear in a linear equation at all. B, the vine plant is expected to grow 9 inches each month. This is going to sound a lot like a slope, right? Because this is a constant rate, 9 inches per month each month. So that would be more like the 14. So it's not the 9, but that also could come up on questions like this, where they, instead of asking for the y-intercept, are asking for the slope. And yes, slope is going to sound like some sort of rate. And that's exactly what that sounds like to me. C, the vine plant is expected to grow to a maximum length of 9 inches. Well, lines don't have maximums. They go up forever. So this is just not a concept that we would ever really see as an answer on a question involving a linear equation. However, parabolas, quadratic equations, those have maximums when they open upside down. So there could be a maximum of vertex for one of those questions. So that's why that's there. And then D is probably the answer. The estimated length of the vine plant was 9 inches when Tavon purchased it. So they're not explicitly using the words starting or initial, but when he purchased it, that's when he started, right? So that is just something we can reason out pretty easily. But I do think it helps that we have certain ideas associated with these components of y equals mx plus b that our brain is kind of already thinking about and going to. In fact, I'm kind of solving this question not necessarily on my scrap paper, but in my head before I even look at the answer choices. I know what to expect, and I think that helps me sort through it and not fall for particular traps, because I know, all right, I'm looking for that starting point. I have an idea. I'm hunting for something in particular. So like I said, that could come up a lot, and starting points, y-intercepts, those are going to be on all sorts of equations. So not just linear equations, but quadratics, exponentials, they all have a y-intercept. And so we should get comfortable with that being kind of a starting point, because when we have a story, we are usually starting only at x equals 0. So we don't have to deal with negative numbers. So 0 is where we start.